You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is November 5th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Tonight, we're going to just come to you with a little bit of a post-election discussion. We're going to talk about some other little news bits, I guess, from a liberty perspective. We're going to talk a little bit about the renovations at the California Capitol. You know, the one in the national White House renovations has been getting all the news, but actually here in California, there's a little bit of a scandal going on about that. And also, too, we're going to talk about a principal that got fired in Dallas because it's a little bit of a race story, but I think you'll be surprised as you hear some of the details on that. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about pardons in our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to the panel. It's just me and Leon the Word Brathwaite tonight. Last Word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. My name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. Well, we always start out with a Liberty quote of the day, and this sort of ties into the last story we're going to do a little bit, but it never hurts to bring up this guy because I think he's sort of almost a legendary patriot of our time for some of the stuff he sacrificed, and that is Edward Snowden. So he, of course, was a whistleblower. He actually wound up tattling on the boss at the NSA when he came to Congress and lied to Congress about whether or not our spy agencies were spying on the American people. And what he said is study after study show that human behavior changes when we know we're being watched. Under observation, we act less free, which means we effectively are less free. And I thought it was kind of an interesting quote because, you know, with all of the different ways that we're monitored now by our government and kept track of, and of course you see this happening around the world in places like China too, you know, that does affect our behavior some. And, you know, I'm not sure necessarily that it's always bad. Like if you think your neighbor is watching, you know, outside your house, maybe you're going to act a little more polite outside, maybe. But you know, you sure as heck don't want it to be the government that's spying on the inside of your house, right? And I think that's a lot more of what Snowden is talking about here. So what do you think about this quote, Leon?
Well, I think it's a good quote. I mean, we don't really want the government spying on us, okay? Certainly, we don't want them watching our movements and seeing what activities we engage in without them having some probable cause to do so. We want to be truly free, and which we should underline that liberty means freedom. That we get to exercise those freedoms uninterrupted by the government. The problem begins when the government takes upon itself to decide who and when they should do this surveillance that we see have been becoming more and more prevalent in our society. And even and I think Snowden is correct in the sense that when we suspect that we are being watched, or we get a sense that we are being watched, or even like if we are being listened, if we suspect that they are listening to us through our phones or whatever else, whatever that means, of course our behavior is going to change. And if our behavior is changing because of either real or perceived surveillance, it is effectively make us less free than we should be. So Snowden is correct, and I agree with him. I know he has taken a very bold stand on this thing. He really have done a great service, a great moral service to the United States. The unfortunate thing of that is that he broke the law to do so. But when your moral conscience stands above the law, then he must take bold action and then bear the consequences. But he's absolutely right. We are less free if we are under surveillance.
Yeah. Well, this always it sort of brings up that one saying that you constantly hear people who might defend the government's maybe desire to spy on you and me and our neighbors and everybody else. And that's it. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what have you got to hide? Right?
Right,
But
yeah.
this is sort of the problem, right? I mean, who decides what is wrong or what's in a gray area? And at some point, it may just be disagreeing with the leader. That's what we find out in a lot of places. So, this is something where I think, we have to have this privacy in order to remain free. So,
well, we must have those checks and balances on the government on their action. I mean, there's a scandal going on right now. It haven't really made the mainstream media. This was something known as Arctic Frost, which was Jack Smith, who was a special counsel trying to prosecute Trump, was trying to spy, or did spy, on sitting U.S. senators. They went to some of the internet service providers, the cell phone service providers, and issued subpoenas, secretly issued subpoenas for the records of certain senators. I think as much as 100 House senators and House representatives were involved.
And Leon, was it just the senators, or was it also the president himself too? I thought maybe I'd heard it was the president himself as well.
No, I come into that actually. I'm coming to that.
Okay, sorry. didn't mean to jump the shark on you.
Yeah, no, it's right. So they in this whole Arctic Frost, they were working on getting the cell phone records of the actually Jack Smith was working on getting cell phone records of senators and some members of the House of Representatives, all Republicans. There's not a single Democrat in this thing. Also, Jack Smith apparently at one time had seized Donald Trump's phone, and up to now we're not sure what was his probable cause in trying to do so. But there was a lot of spying ongoing in the Trump campaign, the 2016 campaign, and to this day we don't know what was the probable cause for those surveillances that were done on the Trump campaign, and this extended into his presidency. Okay, so there's a lot of things coming out about these things right now. But it gets back to the quote, okay? When we are living in a state being, the United States in this particular case, where surveillance is being implemented by the government, seemingly at random, without good probable cause to do so, we are not free. We are certainly not free. Our behavior will change. And if we are aware of it, that is, but we are not free. Even if we are not aware of it, if the government is spying on us, we are certainly not free if they can do so without even our knowledge.
Well, and the other thing too is once government becomes so large and intrusive into our lives, but there's no way any of us can be aware of all the laws that are out there. So therefore, you can't always be aware if you might have accidentally broken a law. I mean, even if it was unintentional, right? Just an accidental thing. And if the government is allowed free reign to just snoop through all your stuff, they're bound to find that you violated something somewhere.
Exactly.
So, I mean, look at Joe Biden, our former president. He literally had all of these classified documents just sitting next to his Corvette in his garage. He clearly didn't, either he didn't understand or he knew and just didn't care. But either way, it's like, well, I mean, should the government just be free to come through his house anytime they want, and just in case, right? That he might be breaking some sort of a law somewhere. Maybe he pulled that mattress or what is it? The label off the mattress. Do not remove under force of law. Oh yes, it can make the mattress police the most powerful entity in the country.
Exactly. But in the Joe Biden's case, it's actually far worse than we think. And he was not prosecuted for it. But Joe Biden had classified documents, stretching back to his time as a U.S. senator, and those documents were in those SCIFs are those secure areas where senators, at least certain senators, can view classified information. It's a secure area, and the documents are not to be removed from the SCIF. And Joe Biden had documents in his garage that was taken from the SCIF. So that means he actually had no reason to have those things in his garage, but he got away. When the Democrats do it, it's always different than when Republicans do it. So it's really kind of a bad situation, really.
Yeah. Well, this does bring us up to, I think, our first topic, and this is just a brief topic, but we've been talking about the lockdowns every day, every show since they started, and quite frankly, it feels like it's not making a huge amount of difference in a lot of people's lives, although I guess there are some people who are directly affected. But I guess to start off, this is historic. We've gone farther than any administration has ever gone in the lockdown. So let's play the game. Guess that number. How many days has it been? Leon, how many days do you think we've been locked down at this point?
I think it's 36.
36. I'm going to guess 35. Let's pull up the number here. So, and it is 35, but I do feel like I might have cheated, because as I prepped the show, I saw it was a 30. So as I was getting this tab ready. So, so we won't bet lunch on it, or
Okay, all right.
But 35 days, right? I mean, this is, starting to make you wonder, if you can get by without government for 35 days, do you really need it? There might be an awful lot of it. You start to scratch your head and say, I don't know. But I tell you, let's see, CNN has a little rundown here. This is a November 5th thing. And it looks like the biggest thing, if you're not waiting on SNAP payments or something, or if you're not a federal worker waiting for their paycheck, the biggest thing for most citizens is that this could have an impact on holiday air travel because of the FAA workers. So it's too bad we didn't have Tim here, to see if he had any thoughts on that. But I don't know, Leon, is this going to impact you? You seem to be a man about the world all the time here. So.
I don't know what I'm man about the world, but I'm supposed to be going to Puerto Rico next week, actually. I'm leaving on the 12th or the 13th, which is sometime next week, to go to Puerto Rico, and I have to get a flight from here to Miami, and then from Miami to Puerto Rico. So I don't know. Maybe it will affect me. I don't know. I mean, I don't care about the shutdown, quite frankly, to the extent that I want the people who are essential, really essential to the running of the country, air traffic controllers, the military, law enforcement, and that kind of stuff. I want them to be paid. I want them to still do their job. But the rest of the government, as far as I'm concerned, they could shut down forever. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. They could shut down forever, as far as I'm concerned, because they are useless. They do more harm than good anyway. Okay, I know they're making a big deal about these SNAP payments. I think this is a national disgrace that everybody seems whining and crying on the TV about 42 million people are not going to get their SNAP payments and blah blah blah. What about these people who are of working age, are in their most productive years, who are sitting on their behinds waiting for people like me and you to go to work so they could get their SNAP payment? What the hell is this?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, yeah, this is, and I guess it would have been good if we would have had a little bit of video of this, but you can certainly go out onto any of the social media platforms and check for angry SNAP recipients. And you will find lots of videos of people talking about the violence that they plan to commit if they don't get their SNAP payments, which, we're talking about maybe $200, right, a month, is somewhere in that range. So, the idea that some people would literally threaten violence over $200 is,
Jason, this dependency disease that the government creates, especially democratic left-leaning governments, they create these things. Look at the end result. People become unproductive, and they even would threaten violence. Look at what you're saying right now. They will threaten violence if we don't go to work. Well, I'm retired right now, so I already did my time where that is concerned. But if we don't go to work, so they could get their $200 for doing nothing, they think they have a right to threaten us, the working ones, threaten us with violence. What madness is this? This is what the dependency disease does, and this is what the government have been creating in massive amounts since 1965. It's a horrible thing. We should not be glorifying the fact that these people can't get their SNAP payments. We should be asking them why the hell they're not looking for work. That's what we should be asking.
Yeah, in some of these cases, people are talking about how they've, been on these handout systems for years. We're not talking about just a few months to get by in a bad time. And this is part of the reason, just from a libertarian standpoint, why libertarians would much prefer that charity remain in private hands, not in public hands, because when it's private, there's always a feedback mechanism. I mean, people who give, usually if you took the time to figure out that you wanted to give to somebody because there's some cause you believe in, you're probably actually going to keep track and see if your contributions are actually doing some good out there. And if they're not, you're probably going to change and give it somewhere else where you think they'll do better. That doesn't happen with the government. The government ask you, it just comes into your pocket, takes it, and hands it to somebody else. And this is why you can have such terrible feedback, why a person can be on assistance for years and still be getting assistance and not necessarily be improving. And that's, I think, under a private system, people would start to scratch their heads and say, hey, look, I don't think this is working. We need to change what we're doing. And so
without a doubt. I mean, ideally, all of these things will be in the private sector, okay, in private hands, who will be much more responsive to the needs of the people they're trying to serve. With some distant government in Washington, D.C., or in Sacramento, here in Sacramento, they're not going to be able to do that. Okay, they make their rules and it's become so bureaucratic. You just said they're reach in our pocket and give it and give it to somebody else. That's not what they do. They reach in our pocket, yes, but you left out an important point. The bureaucrats take their cut and then they give it to someone else. So this welfare system, this SNAP payments and all this kind of stuff is really supporting a bunch of nice middle-class bureaucrats. That's what it's really doing. Because I will bet you if we did some real deep analysis in this, probably the people who is intended to be served by these things is probably like 20 cents on the dollar that ever reached to them. And this is madness. This is complete madness.
Yeah, it would be a disgraceful record if you were a charity and you were showing that, so much of this is going to a third party, essentially the hands that are delivering it to other people. I mean, you think about this too. This is what happens in a lot of foreign aid as well. The money is sent to a place where need may have been identified by somebody, but then suddenly the terrible corrupt politicians of that area get their hands on it, right? Because they're the ones in control. So that, it doesn't wind up making it, at least not a lot of it, to the people it's supposed to get to.
Yes.
So, But
this really serves the point that we're trying to get to. What is the purpose of these dependency programs when they're destroying the lives, really and truly destroying the lives of our fellow citizens? Yeah, people will say, well, if we take it away, it's so cruel, it's so horrible. How could you do that? Okay, but what is the alternative? What is the alternative? Let these people remain in this state of dependency for generations, and that is happening for generations. People are in this state of dependency, and now their dependency is so much of disease to their body. Now they think they have a right to threaten violence against us, the working ones, the productive ones in our society. This is insane. It is true. Maybe the government, it's best if we have it in private hands. I totally agree with that. Maybe the government can have some kind of program to help people through their difficult times. Maybe a spouse may die unexpectedly, or some you may get laid off from a job or some kind of stuff and things like that. Okay, I will go along with you for a little while, but don't pass 1 year. Okay, don't pass 1 year. Let's going to help you get back on your feet. Maybe if you want to get a little bit of training somewhere, I'll be willing to do that. You're a fellow citizen. Still have a little bit of compassion, even though ideally I don't like none of these programs. But I'll be willing to go with you for a year. Maybe even I'll give you a year and a half. But I don't want to see people in their working years, generations of people in their working years, sitting around doing nothing and then complaining about the fact that I don't go to work, so you could sit on your ass. No.
Yeah. Well, and there's a false dichotomy that often gets set up here too, where people who are generally socialists, they tend to think that, hey, if the government doesn't do it, nobody will do it, which is a really odd thing to think about, because a lot of people are willing to give to charity in the first place. But if you don't think people individually would give to charity, why would you think by centralizing by giving a government force to take stuff from some people and give it to others, that somehow it's going to be distributed in a fair and equitable way? I mean, if you don't trust individuals, why would you trust the government to do it?
Exactly.
Exactly. Government's just made up of individuals, right? So, and you've given them force and a lot of perverted incentives too when you empower them. And this is usually the cry of poverty pimps. People who get their power from government by essentially saying, "Hey, I will be the great provider and giver," which really just means redistributor. In government.
Go ahead.
If you elect me, but this does take us to our first big topic of the day, which is the elections, because I tell you, there was speaking of poverty pimps, the Democrats did well last night. And they picked up some big things, some governorships, and a few other noteworthy things. Let's watch this video real quick here to bring everybody up to speed.
Past the hour after the polls had closed, and Zoran Mamdani, the 34-year-old Democratic Socialist, is the winner, as expected, and will be the next mayor here in New York City. Numbers coming in early. The check mark is next to Mamdani, and he ran a campaign after winning in a crowded Democratic primary field that was impressive to many, driven by the youth vote here in New York City. On the left side of the Democratic Party, without a doubt, as you look at his campaign headquarters. And now Mamdani, just turning 34 years of age, will be the next mayor in the largest city in the country.
So the Democrats won big last night. The crowning jewels were a couple of governorships and Proposition 50 here in California. And then, of course, the biggest one of all, which was Zoran Mamdani, an avowed socialist, winning in New York. So let's go check out the Democrat Victory Party. So who is Zoran? Well, let's hear in his own words what he thinks as far as socialism and capitalism.
Make it very clear that people cannot eat words. people need to have actual food. People need to have actual houses to live in. People need to have actual schools that they can go to. And I think it's so critical that this journey into understanding the way in which we should relate to power, this journey in understanding that it is socialism that we are fighting for, is a journey that should begin as soon as possible for every single person in this country and in this world.
There must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And that's what I'm focused on, is dignity and taking on income inequality. And for too long, politicians have pretended that we're spectators to that crisis of affordability. We're actually actors, and we have the choice to exacerbate it, like Mayor Adams has done, or to respond to it and resolve it, like I'm planning to do.
So just resolve it. I mean, like I noticed that if you look in California, we have tent cities all over the place. We have some of the biggest wealth disparity, and in his mind, it's no, you just resolve it. You get the right people. So is he saying that it's that easy? You just simply get the right person in there and you fix it all? Well, I guess he's saying the right people aren't in control in California, because it's all Democrats who are in control in California, and we have a crap ton of problems with livability. And I noticed too, the Democrats have been in control of New York for quite a while as well.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, anyways, what are your thoughts on this, Leon?
Well, words, especially words from people like Zoran Mandani, is very affordable. He loves to talk about affordability. Words are very affordable I guess with all politicians, I guess, because words are cheap. They're very, very cheap. You see, people like Zoran Mandani, they love to talk about equality and equity and all these things and wealth redistribution. They have no concept of capitalism, why capitalism works, or why the incentive system of capitalism really lift people out of poverty, why that incentive drives people to try to better themselves. He have no concept of this, okay? You listen to his speech last night, and all they hear about all the nice, wonderful, flowing words. Well, he's a very articulate man, I'll give him that. All these nice, flowing, wonderful words about how he's gonna bring all these great things to New York. But you know who he quoted? His first quote from his speech was from Eugene Debs, who was a communist. He's long dead now, obviously, and that kind of stuff. That was his great quote from his speech last night. But these people, they always bring about equality. They do. They're always successful in this equality that they talk about so wonderfully. They're always successful at it. But the equality of misery is what they bring.
And to hear more about the equality of misery, if you're watching on public access, you're going to have to go online to knuckleheadsofliberty.com and catch the rest of our show there, where we're going to talk about some of that equality of misery that they've been bringing, along with a few other stories and some chicanery here in California with the Capitol renovation and a little bit of a pardon pickle that Trump has gotten himself into. But anyways, back to you, Leon.
Yes. One of the things about Mamdani's programs that he had proposed, he want to have government-run grocery stores. He want to have free bus rides, free train rides, and God knows whatever else that he want to make so affordable. He want to do something about rent. Rent is too high, and all these things that he wants to do and stuff. The one thing that he never speaks about, how is he going to pay for all of this? How is he going to pay for all of this? Like Margaret Thatcher said, you always run out of other people's money. That's why socialism never works. And we are just going to see a replication of this in New York. Another failed attempt at socialism. But what is disgusting about that, how much more suffering the people of New York will have to take before they come to their senses. Mandani is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's as bad as that is. One of the things struck me a little bit odd, and I wish I would have had enough time to clip some of the conservatives on this, but a lot of conservatives were discouraging people from voting for Sliwa, which was the Republican in the race against Mamdani, because they thought he had no chance of winning, which, is kind of true. I mean, he only wound up with 8% of the vote, I think, in the end.
Yes.
But Cuomo was the other person who was running. He was a Democrat, but just not an avowed socialist. But the problem is all Democrats are socialist to one degree or another, right? I mean, they're all pushing for government solutions to most problems that could be taken care of privately. And the problem with a lot of these people, I think even Trump weighed in by endorsing Cuomo, I think, in the later the campaign. And there was a lot of pundits like Ben Shapiro and others who were telling people to vote for Cuomo. And to me, that's nuts, right? I mean, if you want your brand to mean anything, to say that, hey, we're different than these guys, why on earth would you back a dirtbag like Cuomo? I mean, this was a horrifyingly bad governor of New York when they went into lockdowns. And I mean, he got a whole bunch of old people killed, lying about, all kinds of issues with the lockdowns and and the numbers of old folks, because they were literally sticking old folks in these homes, and they were essentially trapping them in there with other people who were sick. And of course, the old people were the most vulnerable.
Right.
So I mean, you've literally put a lot of them into what effectively wound up being death traps. Yeah. And and there were just a lot of other things with Cuomo that, no Republican should be happy about. And yet here Republicans are saying they're endorsing him. They're literally saying, vote for this guy. Well, I mean, if you really want people, who are not very well educated on politics to really check out your brand, don't get caught endorsing people who are socialists, right? I mean, like Cuomo, just more of an authoritarian socialist, I guess would be the best way to describe him. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that before we jump on that?
I understood why the act endorsed by Trump at the last end endorsed Cuomo. It was out of practicality. They were trying to defeat the communist Mamdani. He has a very radical background. His father is a professor at Columbia University, and if you read some of his stuff, I mean, the man is downright scary. You're
talking about Zoran's dad, right?
Zoran's dad, yes. Zoran's dad, yes. Zoran's dad,
yeah.
But you're right though. You're right though. We end up with this situation where you're really bastardizing your brand in the name of practicality, which I'm not sure is a good thing. I mean, the whole idea is that win or lose, we should always really and truly promote our brand, whether it's a Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian. We should always promote our brand and take our hits when we get it and take our wins when we get them. But you get in these situations where you're seeing a disaster waiting to happen, and you want to take a shot at somebody else. So it's a practical thing rather than anything else and stuff.
Well, I can understand if you're trapped in that place and you have a lot at stake personally in the outcome of that election. I can understand you looking for, hey, what's the least worst position here? But a lot of these conservatives, they're not in New York who are advising everybody to not vote for Sliwa and go for Cuomo. So I mean, it just seems to me you're really you're really destroying your own brand. And especially imagine if somehow Cuomo had managed to pull it off and win. Okay, well, now how the hell are you going to ever get a Republican in there? Because all the Republicans have now just endorsed Cuomo, and if Cuomo runs again, it's like, hey, I've got all their endorsements.
Because you can imagine if that had happened, Cuomo would have been up there talking about I've got support from Democrats and from independents and even Republicans. That makes me a great, wonderful governor or no mayor of New York City. Come on. That's exactly what would have happened. You're so right.
Well, you know, another thing that I thought was a little, and we talked about this on the show, but Prop 50 passed, and it passed by a fairly sizable margin, I think. And to me, this was one was just a little bit disturbing in the sense that it's you know, clearly both parties are playing this game of gerrymandering. But, you know, the thing that really got me about this one is this was one for national politics. There was nothing else on the ballot in California. So they spent $200 million of taxpayers' money just to essentially help the Democrats nationally. Because that's what wound up happening here. It wound up just being a push to get more seats in Congress. Nothing else on the ballot, you know, nothing pushing any propositions or politicians here within the state to do state business. This was literally just something to gain Democrats more power on the national stage, which really I think is kind of a corrupt, you know, just disgusting thing is what they wound up doing. And it's not a guarantee. All they've done is they've redistricted things, and they think they're going to gain 5 seats out of this when the midterms come up. But, you know, if the Democrats destroy their brand too badly, it's possible that enough people may decide, you know, the margins may be so thin, they may actually not get helped by this. So we'll see. I mean, I guess it depends upon how well Republicans do nationally versus how well Democrats running the state are doing at the time. You know, or I shouldn't say well, it's how badly they both compare to each other, right? Because we're really talking least worse here.
Yes, that's true. You know, I mean, both parties engage in this nonsense. Okay, I mean, Texas did their thing. They think they're gonna get 5 seats out of it. Five net seats out of it. I don't know if that will be the case, but you know, it does appear so. But the problem with, I mean, I don't live in Texas. I live here in California. The problem though with this thing, what Newsom did was that, first of all, we have a law, I think it's in our constitution, that there's an independent commission that's supposed to draw the maps. Suddenly we have politicians in the legislature drawing the maps. So I would think that's some kind of constitutional violation right there. Secondly, this thing was done solely to assist the DNC, solely for the benefit of the DNC. I don't think we should be using taxpayer dollars to aid private organizations. This would be true whether this thing was to help the Republicans, to help libertarians, or to help Democrats. I don't want our taxpayers' dollars being used to help any party, any private political party. I don't need that, okay? So anyway, yesterday, I don't know if you heard, but yesterday, I think the Republicans filed a lawsuit to block the implementation of Prop 50. I don't know if it will be successful. The Democrats do control the Supreme Court of California and stuff. So I don't know if it will go, but we will see where it goes. But I really think this thing should be unconstitutional. I really think so.
Yeah, because as we've talked about on the show before, there is a citizen commission that is supposed to be set up, an independent commission that is supposed to set these districts, and that's goes all the way back, I believe, to when Schwarzenegger was here as governor. I think he set that up, and the idea was to try to that people supported the idea of not leaving it in the legislature's hands, because otherwise there's too much chance for self-dealing, you know, people giving themselves safe districts to run themselves in. And, you know, this was just a naked step right around that. And it's a temporary thing too. It like literally says, I think that this only stays in effect until the next census happens, I think. So
yes, until 2030, that's correct, yes.
Yeah. So this is, you know, really, you know, just kind of about as, you know, ugly as it gets, you know, in politics. But you know, that's that's where we are. But it's funny because a lot of these things that we're seeing here are just issues of essentially non-transparency, right? I mean, and that may be ultimately, like we've talked on the show about this, and you couldn't even get the legislatures to admit that they were responsible for helping to draw these maps.
Exactly.
And stuff.
I mean, we had shown previously where we had a news reporter, I think this was about 2 shows ago, a news reporter was asking some of the lawmakers, some of the or state legislators here were asking the members who drew the maps. And nobody would admit that it was the politicians got in some room and decided to draw this map that is more favorable to the Democrats than it currently is. But nobody would answer that. So there's no transparency in this process at all. So I don't know if that's an issue for the courts. I don't know if that aspect is an issue for the courts, but we'll see.
Well,
we'll see.
This lack of transparency has been endemic. We've seen in California politics as it's a one-party state for the most part here. As they've controlled a supermajority for quite a while, and so we've seen this. There was a scandal not too long ago with a fast food bill to give fast food workers minimum wage or raise it to minimum wage to over $20 an hour, I believe it was, and everybody who was involved in one of the meetings to set that thing up was given a non-disclosure agreement to sign. And then we find out afterwards that Newsom that he's exempted one of his buddies, somebody who's contributed to his own campaign, who owned the Panera bread stores. So this is just this is the kind of corruption. But this leads us to another story that we were going to talk about, and that is the renovations going on at our state capitol right now, this is it's funny. We've been talking a lot about renovations for the White House, and of course Swalwell has made a big deal about that, saying he'd destroy whatever Trump build, or hoping that the Democrats will do that when they come in. But it's actually put a little bit of attention on what's going on here in California, and so we have a little video to, I guess, make people aware of some of these non-disclosure agreements that you're going to hear about again, where they're hiding information about an over $1 billion project to renovate this. And keep in mind, Trump with the White House is only spending $300 million, I think between $200 and $300 million of privately raised money. This is $1 billion of our money as taxpayers that are going into our state capitol, and they don't want to tell us exactly how they're spending it. So let's watch the video on this. And this is, by the way, that same reporter from Channel 3, Ashley Zavala, who's becoming a favorite of mine with all of the dirt she's been digging up. So let's watch.
You're following up with the Capitol Annex project. That's the building there you see behind the dome there. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom said yesterday that he would like to know more about the project, where it's at and how much it cost, and when it's going to be done. That is the at least $1 billion office building for lawmakers and the governor that is still under construction.
So, of course, the Capitol building of California would have cost overruns. Let's hear from Ashley Zavala of KCRA 3 on what she's found out about this.
This 3-member executive committee, which includes someone who closely works with Governor Gavin Newsom. They're allowed to meet privately and make decisions behind closed doors. All 3 of them have also signed non-disclosure agreements, legally promising to keep broad details about this taxpayer-funded project a secret.
So non-disclosure agreements. So the people who are literally spending the money of the taxpayers of California are not required to tell how they're making decisions about how to spend that money. That seems almost criminal. Let's hear more about it. In fact, I think she's going to get a hold of Gavin Newsom on that.
It has been years since state lawmakers have provided an estimated cost of the new office building that's now under construction in downtown Sacramento. They have not been forthcoming about how they're spending taxpayer dollars.
Is that appropriate, though? I mean, truly, for the public to not know how much that building costs?
That's what I said. You should get that information. I agree, it's inappropriate. By the way, I didn't know they were not talking to you. I apologize that members of the legislature are not talking to you. They're on recess. I'll check in with them. Let me know. I'm happy to help you try to get access to members of the California legislature with respect. Not my branch of government, but I'm happy because as a taxpayer, I'd like to know as well.
So it doesn't seem to me like Ashley believes that Gavin is being completely forthcoming. Let's hear a little more from Ashley.
California's legislature is leading the project, but Governor Newsom's office has been more involved in it than he let on. Documents from 2018 show when the project was established, they also created a 3-member executive committee that's expected to meet regularly and make final decisions on the project. On it, Assemblymember Blanca Pacheco, State Senator John Laird, and the Director of Operations for Governor Gavin Newsom, Miroslava de la O. Documents provided through a Legislative Open Records Act request show de la O recently signed a non-disclosure agreement like Pacheco and Laird. As we reported last year, more than 2,000 people have signed the confidentiality agreement to legally keep broad information about the project a secret.
So I just don't even understand that. Legally keep information a secret from the taxpayers. I just nuts to me. By the way, too, that this is going to kind of be a norm, I think, in the future. But our governor is such a weasel that I'm just going to keep playing that "Pop Goes the Weasel" song every time.
This is what is happening to us here. I think, in maybe all levels of government. But this one is particularly, it hits us particularly hard because we are both taxpayers here in California. I think the message that these politicians here in California are trying to give to us is pay your damn taxes and shut the hell up, is what they're trying to tell us. That they think they could spend our money, $1 billion. That is what they're telling us. Who knows what it will be by the time this project is done? They could spend all this money. They could cover up the progress of the project because they have like over 2,000 people have already signed non-disclosure agreements to keep this thing a secret. This money we're talking about is not Gavin Newsom money we're talking about. These are our hard-earned tax dollars that we pay to the government so that they can be good stewards of it. And now they want to cover it up. They want to hide it from us. So who the hell are we? Who the hell are we? We are not voters and taxpayers in this state that we cannot know these things. My God, we're in real trouble here if this is legal. I can't imagine that it is. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
This brings me back, though, and this, not the particular quote, but this gentleman here, Mr. Edward Snowden, because think about what's happening here, right? They've set up a situation where they're forcing you to sign these non-disclosure agreements to do work for the government, and then it work that should be transparent, right? I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's one thing to say, hey, if it's maybe there's some conversations that are being had that maybe that there could be confidential business information possibly, and so maybe there's a few checks that need to be made, but generally most of this stuff should be transparent. And the idea that this is a public building, what could be something that you need to hide from the public about building a public building? We're not talking about something where you're regulating a business and maybe that business is sharing some information about their business that they don't want disclosed to their competitors, right? That would be an example of confidential business information, and there might be a reason to filter that before the public gets it. But we're talking about building a public building. Why would you need to have confidentiality in building a public building? I mean, this is just nuts. The stuff we're seeing. And so the reason I brought in Edward Snowden back again is that suppose, this is why would you put these agreements out there unless you're worried that people are going to talk, right? Talk about something that they should be able to talk about, right? To be able to say, hey, we're working on this public project and this is what we're doing here. I mean, so I don't understand what the issue is for a non-disclosure agreement here other than to persecute people who might be whistleblowers at some point.
Exactly.
Right?
But what you're really talking about here, Jason, I totally agree with you, but what you're talking about here is they are trying to silence speech. This is a government trying to silence speech. It's not to say we're talking about classified information, or like you say, you know, a company may have some sort of trademarks, or they have some sort of other things that they may not want to disclose to competitors. But that's a valid point if that is the case. But that's not the case here. None of the non-disclosure agreements, as we know them, involve you know, things that you don't want your competitors to know. It involves just everybody who's working on this project. Over 2,000 people so far have to sign these non-disclosure agreements, and in it says you could be sued for damages if you speak about it. Okay, so the government in this particular case is trying to silence speech.
Yeah,
this is a clear violation of our rights. Seriously.
Yeah, and this, you know, ultimately, you know, the way it works is citizens should have privacy, as we talked about the quote from you know, Mr. Snowden. You know, to have freedom, we need to have a private life as citizens. You know, we don't need the government spying in on everything. But that doesn't flow in the other direction. In the other direction, government should have almost no protection or no expectation of privacy. Everything the government does should be completely transparent to the citizens. And this is why this is absolutely nuts. It's just completely backwards. You know, what we're seeing here is people being persecuted by the government, you know, and being spied upon and everything else, but you know, the government trying to protect itself from, you know, and another guy that this reminds me of, and we'll mention him near the end of the show as well, but is Julian Assange. He was a guy who was trying to tell us what the government was doing, things the government didn't want to share with the public. And, you know, he wound up essentially being persecuted as a journalist for, you know, over a decade. And, you know, this is really, you know, we're in a dangerous, we're on a razor's edge, I feel like, with freedom of speech and, you know, our journalistic freedoms and everything else, you know, to people to have opinions, because we're seeing in a lot of other Western countries, they are falling on the wrong side of this. They are persecuting people for having wrong speak, you know, to be saying things that don't agree with their government, and suddenly the police come knocking on your door. That is nuts. That's the kind of stuff Orwell was warning us against, and that's happening in a lot of Western countries now. And you know, we're seeing this disturbing trend of the government trying to protect itself from the citizens and being able to pry into citizens' lives at the same time. So this is, you know, important stuff.
Yeah, really, you're so right. You know, you talk about some of these Western governments who are doing that. In the UK right now, it's very, very bad, where people make posts upon the internet, and next thing you know, some police is knocking on your door. And you know, when you think about the UK, I mean, these are one of, you know, Europe and that area, you know, the cradle of Western civilization, and to see them at this point where they are so much into trying to regulate speech, it's just unbelievable, right? That to see that this is the state of play in certain parts of Europe right now. But you know, this is a larger point here that probably should be made. These are really the dangers of big government, because the larger the government gets, the more intrusive it becomes, and they are better able to hide things from us. You know, it takes years to dig through all of the dirt to find out, well, they did this or they did that, or even to try to persecute people for violating of rights. Okay, it's just so horrible that the government have become so large and so powerful, you know, in our lives, that they almost becomes an entity unto themselves, where they are not an entity for the people, by the people, or anything like that. They are now separated themselves from us, and they now want to protect themselves, just like you just said. So if we don't do something to steer our state of play, to steer it away from that iceberg out in the ocean, we're going to hit the iceberg. And we know what happened to the Titanic as a result of striking the iceberg. we got to be very careful where this is all leading, where we have the state government having projects and trying to hide it from us. We have the federal government spying on us, trying to hide that from us too. God knows what else they're doing, right? God knows what else they're doing. There are some other things that we should be probably talking about in shows to come. But these are the dangers that we face. We are on the Titanic, and we are heading for that iceberg. We need someone to steer us away from it.
And ultimately, there's only one recipe. I mean, you've got to have transparency. And the only way you have transparency, the only way you can hope to, is to keep government small and narrow in scope. Because even if there aren't nefarious actors, which there almost always are, but even if there weren't nefarious actors in government, the bigger it gets, the more complicated it gets. And most of us just simply don't have the time. Just think about all of the different board hearings and agencies that are in your community, and ask yourself, how many of them do you attend? And most of us don't attend them because you don't have time, right? They don't have enough room for you to attend, physically in these places. And I imagine most of them probably don't have online accounts that are big enough that if all their citizens wanted to attend, that they could accommodate them either that way as well. So, I mean, because usually they've got, limits of certainly in the thousands, right? And of course, you have millions of people living in a lot of these cities, big cities. So, this is, something where your only hope in being able to keep track of government is to keep it narrow in scope and small. And, the more things that you add on to government, the less you're ever going to be able to keep track of it. So it's just, so many people think that government is somehow my friend. Well, once it gets complicated, it's just a beast. And very likely somebody else is targeting that beast for their ends, people who have a lot more at stake than the average citizen. The concentrated interests are the ones who are going to be pulling the strings in the end. So,
as Ronald Reagan said something like the following, maybe I don't have his exact words, but when he says some of the most terrifying words they have in the English language is, I am from the government, I'm here to help.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly. Yeah. Sadly, there's quite a few people who just aren't educated enough to be scared when they hear those words. That's kind of a sign of the terrible job our school system was doing, which leads us to our next story that I want to talk about here. And they actually had a school where the principal was fired for berating students, and there's a racial twist to the story. So I'm going to play the video and then we can get a little deeper into the story.
For more than 2 years, Chandra Hooper Barnett has been principal of Woodrow Wilson High School in Dallas, a school that announced today has a new temporary leader.
It happened fairly quickly, which is great.
Jennifer Bush's son is a sophomore at Woodrow, who says he was among more than 100 black students called into the auditorium Friday by the principal.
Principal Barnett had told them that they were the reason why the school has a B rating. I guess with the TEA, right? And she said it in a derogatory manner.
So Principal Barnett has been placed on leave, and it doesn't sound like they're going to bring her back. In fact, oddly, with this transgression that appears to be largely centered around race, they've actually replaced her with a white principal, of all choices.
Danielle Peters has been named interim principal, while the school says it reviews details of the incident.
So this is kind of an interesting story because I give you a little more background than what we heard in that piece, but this woman had been, her name is Barnett, I think, and she had been the principal of the school for about 3 years, and she had actually brought their grade point average up from about a C to a B in the school over that period of time. So, I mean, this was a woman who was actually doing her job to some degree until she ran into this buzzsaw. And this is kind of an interesting issue because I don't like the fact that if we were in a completely neutral world, that she brought in people by race and said, hey, you guys are the problem. That to me, that's not cool generally. But think about it this way too. That's all the schools have been doing for the last several decades, is dividing us by race. And this woman is playing within the rules of the system that she's got. I mean, just to remind everybody, we just had this Harvard case that went in front of the Supreme Court not too long ago about admissions into Harvard. And because Black students and Hispanic students were not scoring as well on the objective tests, they decided to make up new metrics on personality ratings, or personal ratings, they call them. And surprise, surprise, Blacks and Hispanics all seem to be much more personal than Asians and whites.
Asian and whites. Yeah. Right. I knew there was something wrong with you white guys. I knew it.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff a guy like Hitler would have been all into, right? Thinking that you could divide everybody by race and assign all kinds of characteristics to them. That's exactly what the left has been doing in a lot of these cases. So I think this is kind of an interesting story. Just in a sense, I think if we were living in a libertarian society, we'd have private schools, private standards, and this wouldn't be an issue. People would simply go to the place they thought served them best, and people would filter people, based upon criteria that made financial sense, right? Because if you're at school and you're turning away all of these smart people, you're not going to do as well as other schools that actually accept them. So there's issues here that are could take care of themselves in a private market, but because we're stuck in this government system and race has been injected, I don't know, Leon, what do you think? This, to me, it seems like it's a complicated story here.
Israel is a complicated story. I really have all kinds of problems with any divisions by race in our society, especially if those divisions are being done by the government. But this is a public school, as far as I understand it. I really have problems with it, regardless, because that is just left over from Jim Crow. The further problem I have here is the hypocrisy involved with this. Now, this woman is being punished because she brought about over 100, I think they said over 100 Black students into the auditorium, and she, berated them for not pulling their socks up, and so to speak, and getting better grades so the school could have a better rating overall. But if that same woman had done that same thing, and all the students she brought in there were white, it would not even have made the news, okay? And she certainly would not have been placed on suspension, okay? So this is the hypocrisy that's involved. And I'll even go further. This is a racist hypocrisy that's involved, that she could have done that same thing to white students, and it would not have been a problem. So this is where this whole Jim Crow monster again rears its head, that we are dividing students by race, and we think this is something wonderful when it's done in the name of promoting the culture of the non-majority. That is great and wonderful. But if we divide them by race, and we have to tell them, well, they ain't doing good enough to keep our school looking good, well, no, that's a problem.
Well, and Leon, by the way, the term, just in case you're watching and you're come from another planet and haven't heard this, is the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is what they call this nonsense now. Exactly. And the crazy thing is, if you heard one of these people, one of these cult lunatics who believes in this stuff, and you brought in a group of 100 Black students, they would say, what a diverse crowd. You brought in 100 white students, they'd say, that's not diverse.
Not diversity.
This is, just nuts, right? But anyways, that's the kind of insanity that we're dealing with here. And I agree, Leon. I mean, if it's government, there should be no irrational, but we should try and eliminate all irrational bias and just try and have a metric that's objective and let people fall where they will. And if we're seeing people of any group that are falling to aren't seeming to perform to the norm or to the average, that should be an alarm bell that there's something else happening in society that we need to address. We shouldn't be burying it and saying, let's hide the results. That doesn't help anybody in the end. We need to understand why this is happening and not just bury it, and because it's an inconvenient truth, I guess, or something. So
but this this DEI is just warmed over Jim Crow, and it's all based on some racist presumptions of, well, we have to have every school, every organization have to quote unquote look like America. I don't even know what the hell that means. It have to look like America. Okay, they're pushing for this look like America, but they always think, just like you say, oh, it's more diverse if we have more blacks, we have more Hispanics. Well, we have nice diversity. Come on, what nonsense you're preaching here? Okay, so this is a racist hypocrisy that I just can't stand. I find it sick.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that always kills me is these race hustlers, and race hustlers aren't always of the group that's getting the apparent direct benefit. Sometimes these race hustlers are of the group that would seem like they're being disadvantaged. Like, for instance, when you get a politician like, say, a Bill Clinton or an Al Gore or a Joe Biden or somebody like that, and notice when they run for office and they're telling you that we should be assigning these jobs, we should be giving special qualifications or special consideration based upon the diversity and the but they don't apply it to themselves, right? I mean, notice that when Bill Clinton ran, Jesse Jackson was running for president too. He didn't step aside and say, oh, you know what? We haven't had a black president yet, so, it would only be fair.
Let's be diverse. Let's get poor Jesse, who grew up poor in North Carolina. Let's give him a chance to be president.
Right. But this is the point, right? I mean, if somebody like a Bill Clinton or somebody like that really believed this stuff, then they should practice what they preach, and they should step aside and say, oh, you know what? We haven't had our quota of black presidents yet. So Jesse Jackson, it's your turn, my man. Exactly. Come on in, right? Although I guess Bill Clinton did say he considered himself to be our first black president at one point. So I guess he was pulling that Elizabeth Warren card way before she did on the American Indian.
Pocahontas was a Native American until we found out that the Native American blood in her was probably less than 1% of 1% of 1% or something.
Less than Donald Trump, I guess. And he's not running around with a headdress, full of feathers, writing a book on Native American cooking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, this is sickness, This is a real sickness, This race hustling that they give it all these nice names. First it was affirmative action, and then it was diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's such a nice, wonderful thing. And then they're always talking about marginalized people. All this damn nonsense. We are all human beings. Let me make news here on the show, Jason. We are all human beings. Okay, we have different wants and we have different needs. Just because I may share a skin color that is closer to someone than it is to you, it doesn't mean anything at all. Nothing. Okay? It just means that we are two human beings who live in America, and we should have all the rights and privileges as everybody else. That's all it means. It doesn't mean nothing else.
Well, and it's sad because, a lot of this stuff is a tit for tat thing, I think. And because justice wasn't blind in the past, then it seems like we're forever doomed to have people wanting to keep the blindfold off of justice in the future. But the only way we ever get to a healthy society is if justice can get that blindfold back on in order to weigh the scales properly. And it's one of those things where I think for libertarians, it's kind of easy because we almost always default to the individual for justice. But
Right.
for people who are socialists, they're always thinking about collectives. And when you're thinking about collectives, thinking, oh, well, there was this group of people who looked like this, or part of this group or that group, and something bad happened to that group in the past. Well, that means everybody who looks like the other group now needs to be penalized. Right?
Yeah.
So we can even out the groups over time. And I mean, that is such an affront to individual liberty that, that just cannot be there's no way out of that hole. If you start digging in that hole, you never get out of it. You gotta just put the shovels down and say, hey, Leon, you're an individual, and I hope you see me as an individual, and let's just try and respect each other as individuals and get along, right? So
one of the most disgusting arguments that is going on right now is reparations. You know what these damn fools want now? They want people who were never enslaved to get money from people who never enslaved them. That's what they want.
Yeah.
How racist could that be? Is there anything more racist than that?
Yeah.
Than to take money from people who committed no crime?
Yeah. Well, and think about this too. And now they are trying to differentiate a little bit some of these programs and say, well, if you black, but you've been here a certain amount of time, right? So they are trying to take care of some of that. But the issue is that there's some people, right? You can't tell if somebody, I mean, this is the whole thing about individual justice. You can't look at somebody's skin color and tell whether or not they were a villain or, and then to top it off, we're separated by generations too in the past. But to just think you can look at somebody's skin color and immediately separate them into a group, there's a lot of people who didn't live in this country and just, they're being expected to pay for the sins of a person who, may have been a slaveholder from 300 years ago or something, right? And, maybe that one family, maybe they had descendants, maybe they didn't, but, maybe there's some form of reparations in that generation if you can get government to turn around at that time. But when you start getting out generation upon generation upon generation later, well, I mean, should we go back to debtors' prisons too? And we find somebody who ran up a debt and then just grab their kids and throw them in jail until they pay off their parents' debts? I don't,
But I can't even see how this could even work. Okay, even if it is to say we're going to take this racist path, but I can't see how. Let's take Barack Obama, say for instance. Okay, Barack Obama's father, a black man, born, raised in Africa. Okay, so he had no connection to slavery here
or Jim Crow.
Or Jim Crow. He have none.
Yeah.
His mother's family was and I'm talking about the ancestors in his mother's family. They were slave owners. So should Barack Obama, who claimed to be our first black president, should he have to pay for people, or should he pay reparations to other people, or should he receive reparation payments? Should he? I would say no. I don't think any. Well, I don't think he should pay or he should receive. Okay, because he's an individual now. Whatever his ancestors did on his mother's side, they did, and that was their sin. If we could have prosecuted them for holding slave, we could have go back and dig them up in the grave and bring them to court and prosecute them. But we can't do that.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, right? I mean, you brought up the key issue here. To have any kind of a regulation or a law, you have to be able to measure when you're in compliance, right? I mean, when you're meeting the goals or whatever it is of that law. And here's the thing, I mean, how do we measure this, right? Do we measure the amount of melanin in somebody's skin and say that, oh, well, this melanin level correlates to this level of innocence or this level of guilt? I mean, this is nuts, right? I mean, this is the party of the science that is saying we need to do this kind of stuff, right? And I mean, this is just craziness, right? You have to be able to, I mean, for justice to to be virtuous, it has to be measured. You have to be able to have a criteria of how you can weigh. That's the reason why the statue of justice has that scales. She has to be able to weigh, to measure, what is true here. And this is, we're just like, this isn't. It's like what. Oh God, I'm trying to think of that guy's name. But he talked about how the colleges had shifted away from there was veritas and social justice, and veritas means truth, right? And that used to be all that the colleges were about. Now most of the colleges are about social justice, and it's nuts. The two do not go together. They because social justice almost never involves measurement. Those scales, they just throw them out, they pull the blindfold off, and they'll tell you what justice is. So.
A bunch of meaningless emotions. That's what it's all about, really and truly.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, this gets us to our final thing, and I think we've really stretched the show this time. But I did feel like this is one that's worth talking about, and it is the pardon issue. And this is our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, so it's usually something that somebody says something kind of stupid or ridiculous in the public eye, but this deals into a slightly bigger context, because this is something Trump recently said, but in context with what happened with Joe Biden with his pardons as well. So let's watch a little video so that we can understand where all this is going.
A bombshell new escalation in the Republican investigation into President Biden's use of AutoPen. The House Oversight Committee releasing a new report, now demanding the DOJ look into every executive action the former president took while in office.
Of course, the crux of the issue in the Biden AutoPen scandal is whether or not Biden even knew what he was supposedly signing, or just other people signing without his knowledge. Let's go hear what the report has to say.
New report, House Oversight Republicans are claiming that their investigation did find evidence that former President Biden declined both physically and mentally, and they accuse Biden's staff of covering that up. Democrats, of course, disagree with both of those claims. And as you alluded to, this conclusion in this report isn't really unexpected. It follows what Republicans in the Oversight Committee have been saying for several months now, but now they are taking it to a new level because they're asking the Department of Justice to investigate all of President Biden's executive actions. They're arguing some of the pardons he granted may not be valid because they were signed with an AutoPen.
So it comes down to pardons, which would be a big issue if Biden were pardoning people and he had no idea whether or not they should be pardoned. I mean, that would put into question the whole foundation of our justice system if people could literally just be excused because the chief executive owed them favors. So this would be a big deal. But of course, Biden isn't the only president who's ever handed out pardons. In fact, our current president is handing out pardons. Let's hear a little bit about how he is dealing with those pardons.
In that context, I do want to ask you about crypto's richest man, a billionaire known as CZ. He pled guilty in 2023 to violating anti-money laundering laws. Right. The government at the time said that CZ had caused significant harm to U.S. national security, essentially by allowing terrorist groups like Hamas to move millions of dollars around. Why did you pardon him?
Okay, are you ready? I don't know who he is. I know he got a 4-month sentence or something like that, and I heard it was a Biden witch hunt.
So Trump is literally pardoning people that he is doing business with, and then claiming he has no idea who they are when they're getting pardoned. That's kind of nuts, right? And just to be fair, I mean, clearly Biden was pardoning his son, who seemed about as criminal as it gets. But I think the issue here, though, is, I guess, brings into question whether or not we really should even have pardons, right? I mean, why should an executive get to decide to let people off the hook for the crimes? I mean, I think we can all think of people who the system has wronged. A few that come to mind in that are certainly deserving, in my opinion, are Edward Snowden, who told us at great cost to himself by blowing the whistle on the NSA that they were spying on American citizens, and that got him permanent exile in Russia. And then, of course, we have Julian Assange, who reported on things that the government didn't want out, and he was harassed. And in the end, Biden did commute his sentence, but that's not quite the same thing as a pardon, admitting the government was wrong in harassing Julian Assange.
Well, somehow that piece got a little bit. I think our connection was a little bit slow there, but anyways, you get the point. The bottom line is that we have this situation where we just spent all this time talking about justice, and we're literally putting the power into our chief executive's hands. And in both Biden's case and Trump's case, they're literally saying that, hey, yeah, I'm not sure who it was I was pardoning in these cases, right? I mean, this is nuts, right? I don't know, especially when there's so many deserving people out there like a Julian Assange or an Edward Snowden, who, these, are almost travesties. These people have stood up for our country, have stood up for truth out there, getting out there, freedom of speech, and high causes, and they're not being pardoned. And yet a guy's a crypto billionaire and he's getting pardoned. A guy's a scumbag son of a president and he's getting pardoned, right? I mean, this is nuts. I don't know. What do you think, Leon?
Well, the pardon power of the president have been abused many times in the past. I mean, Bill Clinton comes to mind. Obviously, Joe Biden, and now Trump is even showing some of that. But the issue with these pardons that were issued by Joe Biden, and the issue with in general, is the use of the auto pen for pardons or for any executive action, which is really a big deal. I know the media is trying to play it down. Now, okay, Trump said he didn't know who the guy was, and that may be true. But at the point in time that Trump signed that pardon, did somebody, well, first of all, there's no question that he actually signed it. And did someone explain to him who this person is? Maybe he don't know, he never met the guy, he don't know the guy, whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of scummy, to be honest, that he would pardon somebody who he don't know. But some aide might have explained to him, well, this is XYZ, and okay, he signed off on it. That's completely legal. Okay, it might be scummy, but it's completely legal. The problem with Joe Biden's pardons is that there's more than enough evidence that, except for the pardons that he actually signed, which was Hunter's pardon, his son's pardon, all of the others were done by auto pen. So the question then becomes, did Joe Biden authorize the use of the auto pen? Now, the president could authorize the use of the auto pen. That would be no problem. Barack Obama authorized the use of the auto pen for something else. George Bush, the second one, authorized the use of auto pen for something else. There's no problem with authorizing the use of the auto pen. The problem we have with Biden is, did he ever authorize the use of those auto pens? And this is a big deal, because this is somebody else taking executive action in the name of the president when the president is incapable of taking such action. This is serious business. Who was running the damn country? That's what we want to know. So this is a problem here.
I definitely agree with you. There is a deeper issue on the Biden thing, just because, there is that one extra level. I mean, in principle, as far as the justice of a particular pardon goes, the whole point of having a president have that power is we assume that we're giving that power to somebody to give some measured King Solomon type of justice, in the end, if somehow the system fails them, right? That's what we're hoping for. But I think what we're seeing is these guys literally aren't, this is just business or something, and they're just signing off on shit where they're not really at all. It's not King Solomon. It's like, gosh, I can't think of a, horrible, but it's just like some crazy, yeah. But I do agree with you, though, that at least in Trump's case, I don't think there's a question of whether he signed it. It's a question of how honest he was in signing it. Whereas with Biden, it's just a question of, did somebody literally usurp power in this case, under Biden, and be signing off on things they had no authority to sign off on.
Well, I see what you're saying about people deserving pardons versus who don't deserve them, or whatever else, all that kind of stuff. The Constitution itself, which grants the president this pardon power, does not really have any good criteria for who should get pardons. It doesn't. All right, is that if somebody committed a crime against the United States, they could be pardoned. And this is at the discretion, essentially, of the executive, which is the president in our case. I mean, usually they go through a process and they vet all the people who could be potentially pardoned, and then it goes to the president and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff.
But remember too, though, the caliber of the person who was going to be our first president at that time, much different than the caliber of the people today.
True. Absolutely true, right? But
yeah, I mean, the moral standards, I think, were a little bit higher back then.
Back then, I have to give you that point. I really do. But in the process of constructing the Constitution, which was supposed to be a document for the life of our republic, which we hope for is for a long, long time, in the process of constructing that, they did not lay out, the founders did not lay out, or the authors of the Constitution did not lay out very good criteria for who should or who is deserving of a pardon. There are no good criteria in the Constitution about that. So the government could use it, the president could use it in essentially any damn way he or she pleases. Now, I have a problem, if I could take a side note here, with some of the pardons Joe Biden issued, which were by crimes that are not now known. They have a word for it. I can't even remember the word right now. But if somebody commit a crime in the future, they could be pardoned for it. Like, oh, the hell they call those things? Adam Schiff, our senator, got one. Oh God. Anyway. Joe Biden come up with this time period that if anybody commit a crime,
yeah, no, I remember the idea was oh gosh, what is that called when they're going forward over a time period? Yes. So yeah, so you're not or even gosh. Can he pardon them? Because this was part of the issue, right? Is that they were giving them these broad time frames of the pardon, like for Fauci, he was given a period of years that the pardon applied to his actions and stuff. And
yes, Hunter was given this also because Hunter have actual crimes that we know about, but there's a time period for which that if there's any crime that become known, that is also pardoned for, and I forget how the hell they call those sort of that kind of pardon. But anyway, several people got those kind of pardons. Yeah. I think this is dangerous if you want the truth.
Oh yeah, it's absolute abandonment of justice. I think if the founding fathers were considering pardons, I can't believe that they would have ever said that you can pardon people without saying what the crime was. I mean, to me, that has to be part of it, where at least the public knows what it is you pardon somebody for, because otherwise it's a blank check. You could have killed 20 people, and oh well, that's okay. You're pardoned.
I wish I could remember the word I'm looking for. I'll have to probably tell you when I remember it. But this whole pardon process really is, I think it needs some level of reform, quite frankly. And I don't know. I mean, it would clearly probably require constitutional amendments to reform it. But right now, as it is, it's quite a mess. And I don't know how this thing with Joe Biden is all going to play out, quite frankly.
I think the term, I just was looking up, I guess they called them preemptive pardons.
Preemptive pardons. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
pardons, yes.
They're essentially saying, well, we don't know what the crime is and we're not going to speculate, but to me, I don't understand how that's certainly not any kind of a King Solomon type of justice. That's what you're imagining, There's no reasoning going on here other than, how much money did you put in my bank account? That's the period of time I'm willing to vouch for your character. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just can't imagine how that could be. It's one thing if somebody says, hey, look, I did this one thing, like let's say, for instance, somebody like, I don't know if you ever saw that show 24, and it had this guy, Jack Bauer. Yeah, and he would run around and he'd break 1 million laws trying to save the country, right? But the point is that, let's say if you were going to pardon somebody like that, I think most people would say, okay, I get it. He did this, but it was to stop an atomic bomb from blowing up 1 million people or something like that. So I'm going to pardon him for this one act of torture that he did here, and he admits to doing it, and I'm going to pardon him for it. Okay, so there you go. That kind of makes sense. But to say, Jack Bauer, he's a buddy of mine, and that whole decade, we're just gonna, whenever it comes up, he's good. To me, that's nuts. I
really wish there would be some. We could get some closure on this whole issue of pardons. I don't know if I don't want to take away the power of the president to pardon, but some sort of reform that probably more refine the use of that pardon power, because it could be abused. It really could be.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think, all these cases, it's just, man, you concentrate power in government and it almost always gets away from you. I mean, I think most people are imagining that they're concentrating that power because they're imagining that they would do some good with it. But a lot of times the people who wind up in control of that power are people like the last two presidents who are just going to tell you right to your face, I don't even know why I pardoned that guy. and to me, that's kind of disturbing.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, maybe that's the old term. That should be a quote that we'll use on the show eventually. But absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I think the pardon is an example of kind of an absolute power, and that is, we're watching it being corrupted right in front of our eyes over the last few years. So yeah, but. Well, anyways, I think that just about does it for our show. Leanne, you have any thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground tonight. I mean, the show went quite longer than I thought.
Yeah, I know.
That's right. I think we got in a lot of good thoughts here tonight. So I think we did our job tonight. I think so.
Well, we did an awful lot, and if we offended anybody, hopefully you'll just give us a blanket pardon for the 90 minutes you've been watching. So thanks so much for watching, and until the next show, think about what you could do in your community to advance the ball for liberty. Hopefully we'll get some guests on our show again soon who've been pushing for liberty in their communities, because I think it's always great to talk to those people so that hopefully they'll inspire you to do the same. But check out some of our old shows too. We've interviewed quite a few people who've been doing things in their communities. But until the next show, think about it in your community, because boy, I tell you, if you don't take a stand, you can see that they're coming for our liberty in every direction. So until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.